You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network.
You're listening to the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition, your source for all news, press conference reactions, analysis, and objective discussions regarding the NHL's Buffalo Sabres from right here in the Niagara region. Here are your hosts, Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad.
Hello, Sabres fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition right here in the Armchair GM Sports Network, your February 26, 2021 edition. Your source for North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the beautiful Niagara region. Find us on social media for updates, giveaways, and sponsorship promo codes by following the podcast on Twitter at Armchair GM Pod. Liking us on Facebook and Instagram by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network. As well, follow this show's podcast specifically for the Sabres show at AGM Sabres Pod. We're always putting up polls each week before our show, so please make sure you're following that as well. You can listen to us on many platforms, including Spreaker.com and the free Spreaker app, as well as Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Deezer by searching the Armchair GM Sports Network, of course. And lastly, our beautiful user-friendly website, armchairgmsports.com, for all things regarding our network, including articles, podcast episodes, sponsors, and contributors. Everything's on there for you guys. Please go check that out as well, and please give us a like and a subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to us right now. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres Edition. My name is Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputo13 with a Canadian Z. And I'm always very pleased to be joined on the Sabres portion of the network by my good friend and analytics guru. He is Austin Broad. You can follow him on Twitter at AustinBroad_TCB, contributing writer for the ChargingBuffalo.net as well as Dauber Prospects. Austin, welcome back. And we've got a lot to talk about since our last episode last week, and a lot on our mind regarding our Buffalo Sabres.
Yes, there's a lot going on, and a lot of it overshadows the fact that the Sabres have gotten points in 3 of their last 4 games. Granted, 3 of them were against the Devils, but on the ice is not really what people are talking about right now in Saberland. It's everything off the ice that is really catching everyone's attention.
Mm-hmm. And if you missed it last week, Austin, go ahead and plug what you're doing and what you're tracking over at the Charging Buffalo and with your new position with Dauber Prospects covering the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, so basically at the Hurricanes, I'm just tracking their prospect system. Every time they get a new prospect via trade or the draft or something, I will create a profile for it on Dauber Prospects, and then I just scout them and monitor them over the year and update their profile a couple times a year. With the Charging Buffalo, I track transition stats, so zone exits and zone entries. I basically go back and rewatch the game the day after it's been played, track those, and then I update it on the advanced stats page of the ChargingBuffalo.net. Ran into some issues this morning with my computer, so last night's game is not tracked yet. It'll be tracked over the weekend, probably before tomorrow's game, and it'll be up there as soon as I'm done.
I'm sure it'll be fine, Austin. You're always up to date with all of your analytics and stuff, so go and check that out, guys. Austin does a great job with his analytics. And speaking of Austin's analytics, the new segment on the show, we will be talking about that today. Austin always has a couple of nuggets for us as far as in-depth analytics that he tracks when doing the games, Sabres related, and I'm sure there's going to be some shocking ones, good and bad, with that. As well, like Austin mentioned, a lot of off-ice talk today. We're going to talk about the 4 games. Again, points in 3 out of the 4 games, but there's a lot to talk about off the ice with the coach, Ralph Krueger, with the Jeff Skinner situation, with Jack Eichel's future with the team. So we're going to talk about a lot of that today. On today's show, it's going to be mostly that as well. We have 2 Twitter polls for this week and a lot of good response from that. So again, please go and check out our Twitter at AGM Sabres Pod, always putting up some interactive tweets for the show each week. So please go and check that out, and we will be discussing that as well. So with that said, this first segment today is brought to you by J&L Flooring, a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. Simplified processes and making homes beautiful are their specialties. Visit them at jnlflooring.com to start on your floor of your dreams games today. I know Jack is a big Sabres fan, so he's going to want to tune into what we talk about today. So with that said, Austin, where do you want to start?
It's a good question. Should we start on the ice, or do you want to get right into the off the ice stuff?
Let's talk about on ice stuff first.
All right, we'll talk about on the ice.
Yeah, let's talk about on ice. So our last episode went up until the until the Washington loss. So the last 4 games, the New Jersey Islanders, and then the 2 more against the Devils. So 3 out of 4 games against the Devils here. And again, they picked up points in all 3 of the games against the Devils, which, you know, is good. But I mean, I would expect it when the Devils are supposed to be the worst team in this division. But Lindy Ruff, I guess, is cursing all of Buffalo right now with being able to have the Devils be somewhat of a thorn in the Sabres' side. But with that said, Austin, just kind of let's run down here. The Devils win 3-2, and then the Islanders lost, which I thought that was the best game that they had played in the 4 games, in my opinion, was that game against the Islanders. They end up not even coming away with a point in that game, and to me, that was the one that was the most frustrating.
Absolutely. I mean, every time we've played the Islanders this year, it's not that it's been pretty, because it's never pretty when you play the Islanders. It's just extremely frustrating. But like you said, that was a game where it felt like they actually played really well and deserved a win, and were kind of starting to break through and break down that Islanders defensive system. But their lack of finishing was really evident in that game, because that was a game against the Islanders where you can definitively say they probably deserved a win in that one.
Yeah, and it was very unfortunate, but obviously they weren't able to get it done, and again, they continue to struggle against this Islanders team. Again, they fall to 0-3 against the Islanders and have scored a total of 3 goals in 4 games, 3 goals in 3 games against this Islanders team so far this year, and it doesn't get any easier as we'll talk about their upcoming schedule. They've got 3 games in a row at Nassau Coliseum playing the Islanders, so that's going to be rough. Like watching that's going to be like watching paint dry when you go against that team and that system with Lou Lamoriello and Barry Trotz and how they do it. But that's a discussion for another day. But with that said, then the other 3 games against the Devils, Austin, again, they picked up points in all those games. They got 5 points out of the 3 games, so that I guess is good. But at the same time, there's still a lot with this club and with the lineup that is just head scratching.
Yeah, so I mean, the Devils this year, it really seems that offensively, at least, the Sabres do have a bit of their number, is because they've scored at least 3 goals in every game that they played the Devils this year. So that's a positive sign. The downfall is, yeah, I mean, that first game against the Devils, they were up 3-0. You know, Cousins was returned to the lineup. Everybody was looking pretty good. But they had the 3-0 lead, and then the third period, they kind of just, the Ralph Krueger system is go into a defensive shell and just let the other team hammer the puck at you. And lucky enough that they only gave up 2 goals. They had a 3-goal lead, and they were able to squeak out the win. The 4-1 win against the Devils, that was actually a really good game. Cousins scored, Asplund got on the board, even Eichel scored the empty netter to make it 4-1
with 0.1 seconds left.
Yeah, Allmark got the nice Ryan Miller shutout. He deserved an actual shutout, but gave up the goal after making 3 ridiculous saves that probably should have went in anyways. The last night's game was unfortunate because, again, Allmark was just standing on his head in that first period before he had to leave with his injury. Sheehan scored a goal as the first line center, and it kind of felt like, hey, maybe this, missing Jack with the injury, which we'll get into later, but maybe, just maybe, because it's the Devils, they'll be able to squeak out a win. And then hate to rag on the guy, but Carter Hutton comes in, and this team is just different in front of Carter Hutton. Carter Hutton he's just not as good as Linus Hallmark. There's no other way to get around it. The difference is extremely noticeable. The confidence in the team looks pretty noticeable when the Hutton's in the net, and he gave up 4 goals. So that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And again, the Linus Ullmark injury, that's unfortunate, Austin, because he was playing some solid hockey for this club. And like you mentioned, that shutout against the Devils, that was just heartbreaking. The fact that Gusev scores with under 30 seconds left. He had made 3 Dominik Hasek just desperation sprawling saves right before that, and the team just couldn't get it done for him. The Devils were just flying around in that last 30 seconds, deciding to play and trying to break the shutout. But What ended up happening on that at Ullmark play that left or that had him leave the game because of injury? Did you think anything of that, and did you think it was serious when you first saw it?
Okay, so yeah, when I first saw it, I thought it was serious. I thought he was leaving the net right then and there. And then when I saw him up stretching and staying in the game, I was like, oh, okay. I think that's where like me being naive probably comes into play, because it happened earlier with Hutton. Remember when he got his like that apparent head injury in the Philadelphia game where he finished the period and then just left? Mm-hmm. Second straight thing that's happened with the Sabres goalie is he got hurt, stayed in the game. I expected him to finish the game, and then as soon as it came out that he was not returning, I was like, oh boy, here we go. Mm-hmm. So at first I thought it was extremely serious. Then I thought it wasn't that bad. And then, of course, it ends up being something based off Krueger's comments after the game. There's not really until we find out more details, but it doesn't seem like there's any reason to be optimistic for Ullmark right now.
Yeah, he made 15 of 15 before leaving, and then Hutton came in and gave up 4 on 25. So doesn't get the loss, though, because they lost in overtime. So I guess we could talk about that real quick, is they were able to come back for once, Austin, and tie the game, of course, on a power play, because what else? What else are they scoring on? Especially the big boys. Sam Reinhart gets the power play goal at 15:30 of the third period to tie the game up. Did you think that, after that they were going to have a chance in this game?
It's like when it went to overtime, I was a little bit skeptical, because the one thing Jack Eichel brings to this lineup is just the ability to just carry the puck up and down the ice with his speed. I mean, Taylor Hall also brings that, but you need more than one guy who has that. And, as good as Sam and Olofsson and those guys are, they're not the skaters that Taylor Hall and Jack Eichel are. So I thought once we got to overtime, knowing the speed that New Jersey has and comparing it to what Buffalo was dealing with without Eichel, I wasn't too optimistic. Granted, I think that shot in overtime by Zacha should have been stopped by Hutton. Again, just my personal opinion. But once it got to overtime, I was pretty worried missing, Skinner and Eichel, and it's just, the lineup is good with, not good. It's obviously way worse without Jack Eichel, but in 5-on-5 hockey, it's okay. But once you get into a 3-on-3, like skill and speed are crucial. I think the Devils' top group of the forwards just outmatched the Sabres last night.
Yeah, without Jack in the lineup, it's going to be hard to match any sort of speed with this team. Their Rolfs and Reinhardt aren't the fastest guys, so Taylor Hall is basically your only burner at that point. But again, they tie the game, so they get to overtime. They get the point without Jack Eichel. So, I guess that's a plus, the fact that late scratch Jack Eichel and you get the point. But again, just too many things go wrong in that scenario when Carter Hutton has to go in and gives up 4 goals like that, which, at least 2 of them probably should have been stopped by an NHL goaltender. But you look at the other side of it, Riley Sheehan gets a even strength goal and ties Jack Eichel for the most even strength goals for his total of even strength goals on the season, I believe. Actually, didn't Sheehan score on his first goal? Was it even strength?
Yes.
Okay, so he has more than Jack Eichel. Apologize. Yeah. So he has one more than Jack Eichel as far as 5-on-5, as well. Rasmus Asplund the game before.
Yes. Sheehan's both goals are at even strength. Yeah, because I was trying to think. We don't have a shorthanded goal yet this year, so both of his goals are even strength. First line center Riley Sheehan.
I thought Tobias Reeder's goal was shorthanded.
That was just as the penalty kill expired, so technically it was basically a shorthanded goal, but on the stat sheet it was 5-on-5.
Okay, so regardless, the 5-on-5 stuff, that's shocking. But another plus, Austin, Casey Middlestat gets on the board on the power play. So 2 more power play goals for the Sabres, and we'll get into the stats in the next segment. But Casey Middlestat gets on the board. Is that encouraging for you as somebody who has been obviously scrutinized as a 7th overall draft pick for this team that has not yet produced?
I'll tell you what, the Casey Middlestat we've seen this season, the Casey Middlestat that I saw last night looks a lot more like the Casey Middlestat that was drafted 8th overall. The Casey Middlestat we've seen this season is definitely a player who can play in the NHL. Is he going to be a elite point producing top 6? No, but he's now showing that he can play a power play role, and he's looked really good. Last night Thompson and Lazar actually looked pretty good, but in the game before that, Sheehan and Lazar were absolutely other than the Cousins line, probably the biggest standout line to me. So it's extremely encouraging to see this. It's his speed looks a little bit back. He's got more confidence with the puck. You saw him try to make a few skilled plays there. He's also showing he's a little bit stronger and a little bit more committed to working hard. One of the biggest things with Middlestat was the level of hockey he played at before. Staying in high school probably a little bit longer than he should have. He's been playing hockey where he can just rely on his skill because he was so much more talented than everybody. Obviously, you can't do that at the NHL. You have to put in the effort to couple along with the skill, and we're seeing that now this year. Mm-hmm. And it's really encouraging considering the fact that this lineup needs somebody like that. We thought it was going to be Tage Thompson this year. Middlestat is showing he's more serviceable and can provide more than what Thompson has shown this year. So as of right now, I'm extremely encouraged by Middlestat. Hopefully when this lineup gets back to full strength, the coaching staff and my buddy, I'm not going to call out his full name here, but my buddy RK will keep him in the lineup.
Yes, the guy's name that Austin refuses to mention going forward on this show. But with that said, I think we need to touch on something before we hit the break, Austin. You mentioned when the lineup gets back to full strength. It probably won't be back to what we expect full strength because we should talk about the really unfortunate injury to Jake McCabe. And he was playing some solid hockey for this club, obviously an assistant captain for this team now. Been on this team for a long time. And that unfortunate leg injury that basically tore everything, ACL, MCL, meniscus, everything going into the board. So he's going to be out 6 to 8 months and hopefully ready for next season. But heartbreaking for Jake McCabe. He's been a heart and soul player of this team for a long time.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking for him, and it's even more heartbreaking for him from a wider perspective. This was a contract year for him. He's finally going to hit unrestricted free agency. I hope Buffalo can find a way to bring him back because, like you said, he has been their best defenseman this year. He battles hard. The coaching staff really likes him, so hopefully he recovers. Hopefully the Sabres can find a way to retain him, and we can get him back because, yeah, like you said, who would have thought that Jake McCabe – it would obviously know we'd be an important injury. Who would have thought that Jake McCabe going down could be arguably the most important defenseman on this team, and now they're not going to have him this year. So, and we've seen what their defense looks like without him and Ristolainen in the lineup, and it's chaos is the one word that I think of when I think of the Sabres defense right now.
Mm-hmm. And the other one, Rasmus Ristolainen, he's day-to-day now. He's back skating, but
he's practicing with the top four right now. He's paired up with Jacob Bryson today on the ice.
Mm-hmm. So, again, that's a good sign for Rasmus Ristolainen, who has had some severe side effects from the COVID-19 virus that he got from the whole New Jersey breakout. So it's been very scary for him, some heart issues and some very big fatigue issues. So glad to see Risto's, back on the upcoming, and hopefully we see him in the lineup upcoming because they could really use him, and they've really missed him, I think. He was playing some of his best hockey this year for this team. So, yeah, I think he's sorely missed on this decor right now.
Absolutely. I mean, Ristolainen he's polarizing to say the least because he's very liable to make a boneheaded decision, but he's also very, very good and a very key member of this group. He's been here for a long time. He's a veteran. Him and McCabe were so good together this year. And no disrespect to the Brandon Davidsons and the Matt Irwins of the world, they're not even close to talent wise to what Rasmus Ristolainen is. So being able to get him back and push one of those fringe defensemen back to where, they are and where they belong is the taxi squad to fill in every once in a while is going to be huge. And hopefully he doesn't rush back, but selfishly, hopefully he's ready sooner rather than later.
Yeah. I don't want to see Matt Irwin in his spot anymore after what I saw last night, after what Jesper Bratt did to him. I don't want to see that number 52 on the ice any longer. And lastly, Austin, quickly, probably in about 30 seconds to a minute, your thoughts on Will Borgen obviously coming in, Krueger lucking into that one, but that's a discussion for another day. But just your thoughts on how he played before he unfortunately hit the shelf as well. Somebody that definitely Sabres fans can look forward to in the future, as he looks like one of the bright young stars on this upcoming team who, like we said, got called up from Rochester and the taxi squad and looked great in the little bit of action that he had.
Put it like this, he played so well in his little 4-game stint that if the Sabres don't protect him for the upcoming expansion draft, they're going to lose him. He doesn't do too much with the puck. He lets his teammates handle that. He does his job well, and he fits perfectly with the system that's Krueger wants to play, that low event system. So Will Borgen was fantastic, and the 6 to 8 weeks can't go by soon enough, because I can't wait to see that kid back on the ice and back in the Sabres lineup.
Mm-hmm. Him and Rasmus Dahlin could be a pair that we could hopefully see for years to come if they both pan out like we have seen flashes of. So that's encouraging as well. But with that said, we're going to take a first commercial break on the show today. We're going to come back, and we're going to get into Austin's analytics and other team statistics that we want to talk about. So stay right here. We're right back on the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano, serving traditional-style Italian pizzas made with the freshest, top-quality ingredients. Loaded subs and their famous chicken wings. Winners of the Reader's Choice Diamond Award, 4 years running from Niagara this week for Best Pizza and Wings in Niagara Falls. Home of the best tray and wing combo in town for the price and quality. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., located on the corner of Drummond Road and Dunn Street. Available for call-ahead pickup or delivery at 905-374-4400. Make sure to like them on Facebook and view their website for their menu at carmine'spizzeria.ca. Carmine's Pizzeria Italiano. Way too good. As we all adjust to this new world that we're living in today, masks are now mandatory, and Niagara's own Custom PPE is Canada's leading face mask provider. Visit them online at customppe.ca and choose between several mask options with different colors and sizes. Add your organization, company, or team logo so you make your face masks unique. Available to purchase online 24/7 at customppe.ca and shipped within 1 week. They have the best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, and no order is too big or too small. Also offering custom floor stickers as well as face and counter shields for your business or workplace. Visit customppe.ca and use the code ARMCHAIR at checkout for 20% off your custom or blank face mask today. Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider. Attention job seekers, if you are currently looking for work in the Niagara region, you owe it to yourself to check out the services provided by the Niagara Employment Help Center, located at 6100 Thoroldstone Road, Niagara Falls, directly across from the Camisos Plaza. Their free services include resume and cover letter writing, community resource and referral information, local labor market information, job search strategies, assistance with clarifying employment training and career goals, employment counseling and job search support, second career information and registration assistance, and all their services are currently provided by appointment only. So give them a call at 905-358-0021 or visit their website at ehc.on.ca, the Niagara Employment Help Center. This Employment Ontario program is funded by the Government of Ontario.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Welcome back, Sabres fans, to segment 2 of our Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition. Brandon Caputo and Austin Broad back with you here. I don't know about you, Austin, but the Sabres dance, especially this version by Guitar Logic, doing our intro for us here. Great job. But the Sabres dance always gets me in a good mood and gets me optimistic about the Sabres, no matter how bad that they've been the last 10 years. I can always get in a good mood listening to the Sabre dance. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, no matter how depressing you are, the Sabre dance can never really bring you down. It's a very cheery song, and it reminds you of the good old days.
The good days, back when this team was good, probably when our dads were proud to watch this team. Maybe not us. But with that said, this second segment today, brought to you by Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, authentic and unique Italian-style food right here in Niagara Falls, Ontario. Check out their Facebook and Instagram pages for updates and to view their adjusted hours and try out their awesome new takeout menu, spicyolivebarandgrill.com. So, Austin, let's talk about some Well, actually, we're going to talk about some statistics and analytics and stuff, but first, we have the updated lines at practice today, Austin. So, we talked about this in the commercial, and oh man, let's hear these lines, because there's definitely something to be said about these line combinations with minus Jack Eichel in the lineup.
Yeah, do you want me to do the D pairings too, or do you just want to stick with the forwards?
Let's stick with the forwards, because we know that with the defense, but with Risto out and Jake McCabe, it's not going to look the greatest, and Will Borgen as well. So let's just stick to the forwards, because that's where the biggest concern is right now.
So after his one-game stint at first-line center, Sheehan was replaced by Curtis Lazar. So you have Curtis Lazar with Olofsson and Reinhart. The second line remains the same. You have Eric Stahl, Dylan Cousins, and Taylor Hall, thankfully. That third line, Krueger continues to keep them together, even though they should be shot into the sun. Reeder, Eichel, and Oposo. The fourth line for this practice is Skinner with Middlestat, and then Sheehan on the other wing. So that's not bad.
That
and then
line
the fifth line,
better.
just for extras, who the heck knows? Maybe Ralph switches this up by tomorrow. But the extras are Casey Fitzgerald, practicing forward. He's a defenseman. Rasmus Asplund and Tage Thompson. So after, a couple of decent games from Asplund, he gets one game with the Eichel and Oposo line. They get absolutely caved in because that's what Eichel and Oposo do, and Asplund gets taken out.
That fourth line sounds better to me than the third line. Just saying.
Oh yeah, that fourth line with Skinner, Middlestat, and Sheehan. I'm not getting ahead of myself because we have no idea if RK is going to put Skinner back on the lineup, but that kind of is an intriguing line to me.
Curtis Lazar, we laugh about first line center, but the shocking thing, and we might as well tie this into the statistics part, is that he leads the team in even strength goals, Austin. And
he's tied for first in even strength points.
That is a problem. And as much as I like Curtis Lazar, I think he's a great guy, and I think he's been a great addition to this team the last 2 years as a should be fourth line center, taking key faceoffs. And I really think that Lazar is a good fourth line player in this league. But when he's scoring your most even strength goals, that is a major problem, and something that we discussed on TV on the Stretch Pass this week. And again, I'll go through it again. I mean, Reinhart has 2. Eichel and Olsen have 1. Hall and Skinner have 0 as far as 5-on-5 goals go. And those are your highest paid players, and there's a problem with that when guys like Curtis Lazar, Tobias Reeder, Riley Sheehan, Rasmus Asplund, who gets in for 2 games and is tied with half of these guys that are making your top dollar and your top point producing guys on your first and second line. There's issues with that, and obviously the 5-on-5 scoring has been atrocious for this team, which is crazy because they are first in the NHL as far as power play percentage. They lead the league in power play percentage. It's shades of Dan Bylsma's season where they were the best ranked power play, but horrible in everything else. And as far as goals for per game, goals for total, they currently sit technically third last and should be second last because New Jersey's 1 behind with 2 less games. So I'm going to go ahead and say New Jersey gets at least 1 goal in the next 2 games, and Buffalo and the Rangers are just 3 goals ahead of Anaheim for the least amount of goals in the league. And just this team can't score, and when they do score 5-on-5, it's not their big point producing guys, and it's Victor Olofsson scoring on the power play is basically what goes around with this team.
That's, you pretty much summed it up well. I mean, Lazar has all 4 of his goals at even strength. Reeder's got all 3 of his goals at even strength. Stahl, Reinhart, Cousins, and Sheehan all have 2. And then you have Eichel, McCabe, Ristolainen, Miller, Jokiharju, interesting, and Asplund. Those are your even strength goal scorers this year for the Sabres. Nobody else on this lineup has produced an even strength goal. So Taylor Hall, Victor Olofsson, Jeff Skinner, Casey Middlestat, Cody Eakin, Oposo, you name it. Even Stephen Fogarty. I mean, he only played 8 minutes, and he's not a goal scorer, so I'm not going to lump him in there. But those are your forwards with 0 5-on-5 goals this year.
And Colin Miller, who usually shoots the puck into somebody's feet or something or gets it blocked, he even got a puck through the net and scored in the last 4 games, which was interesting after you had called him out for not being able to get a puck through. I think it was the next game against New Jersey. He found one that got through, and you were like, yep, Colin Miller was listening. So Colin Miller even got on the score sheet 5-on-5, guys. So there's no excuse for these guys to not be able to get on the score sheet 5-on-5. It's craziness to think that their power play is ranked number 1, and yet they're still dead last in the division and tied with the Rangers. The Devils have 2 less games played and 1 more point. And the crazy thing is, like we mentioned in the pre that we were talking about, 6 points behind the Flyers for the last playoff spot, and they play the Flyers upcoming the next 2 games. So watch them rattle off 4 points, and they're sitting 2 points behind, and then Ralph Krueger has an excuse to go out and say that, this is the best thing forward for the group is with this lineup. And, those comments we'll get into in the last segment. But as far as the rest of the stats go, Austin, anything else you want to point out before we get into your actual analytics portion?
In the actual stats, I'll point out one thing that I find interesting before we get into that. The Sabres have I mean, we've already talked about it at length, but guess who leads the team in 5-on-5 assists? And guess how many they have?
I'm going to say it's going to be somebody with less than 3.
No, actually, Taylor Hall has 5 total 5-on-5 assists. That is the leader in 5-on-5 assists, and that also has him. There's 4 guys with 5 5-on-5 points. It's Hall, Eichel, Stahl, Lazar. Those 4 are your leaders in even strength points. They all have 5. Hall and Eichel's are literally assists. Eichel got that 1 5-on-5 goal, but you have 10 total 5-on-5 points from your $10+ million player and Taylor Hall.
Yeah, that's not good. This Taylor Hall, I guess, experiment just has not worked out as great. Like, the first game was great. Scored that power play goal, and you're like, wow, this is going to be a dynamic team to watch this year. And ever since, it just has not played out like I think Taylor Hall had anticipated, because obviously he doesn't look like he's getting that long-term deal like he had hoped, and the Sabres aren't reaping the benefits of anything that he has shown in the past. It just has not worked.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, we'll get into it when we talk about Austin's analytics, because there is a stat that is encouraging for Taylor Hall, but the points just aren't there. And let's face it, that's what you get paid for in the NHL. You get paid to produce points, and right now they're not producing points.
Yeah, and Curtis Lazar, first line center, might as well. I mean, he leads the league in even strength goals, so why not? Maybe we get 20 minutes a game and he'll score a couple 5-on-5 goals, and they'll give him an 8-year contract worth $8 million instead of Jeff Skinner. But with that said, guys, let's get into our newest segment on the show, and that is Austin's Analytics. Austin, take it away.
All right, so I'm going to rattle off 3 names for you, and I'll let you try and guess what they have in common, or what I'm bringing them up for. Taylor Hall, Jeff Skinner, and Tage Thompson.
Least amount of, I don't know, zone entries? I have no idea.
Oh, believe it or not, this is all via natural stat trick. Those are the top 3 Sabres in individual high danger scoring chances. So Taylor Hall has 20 high danger scoring chances. That leads the team. Jeff Skinner, who's missed 3 games, has 16. That is second.
Playing fourth line.
Yeah. Tage Thompson has 12. He's played 9 games. They have combined for 0 5-on-5 goals.
That's incredible.
So that's where the analytics are frustrating, useful. I don't know. Hockey's a random sport, so it's impossible to say, but Taylor Hall and Jeff Skinner are producing legitimate scoring opportunities. They're not going in. So now it just basically depends on, are you one of those guys who believes that the luck is going to turn around, or are you just one of those guys who believes that this team is cursed? Because depending on your viewpoint, you're either very encouraged or you're very discouraged by that. But Taylor Hall and Jeff Skinner, they're producing chances. The puck's just not going in. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what matters. Yeah. But if Ralph Krueger is going to sit Jeff Skinner, and I'm not advocating for Taylor Hall to be sat, by the way, when I say this, but if Krueger is willing to sit Skinner because he's not finishing and the results aren't there, he's also got to start looking at Jack Eichel and Taylor Hall. Granted, he shouldn't, but if you're going to use that reasoning for Skinner, you have to use that reasoning for everybody else in your lineup. Like, there shouldn't be passes if that is going to be your reasoning for benching a $9 million player for 3 straight games.
Yeah, you can't just single out Skinner like that. If the other guy, if you want to make a real message like that, Hall and Eichel have every right to be in that same spot with Skinner. But again, Skinner's ice time has been shocking, and not being able to play on the top 9 is just, it drives me crazy. But with that, I mean.
I got another one too that is, again, so Krueger said Skinner is, he has to play like the full 2-way team game. Well, Jeff Skinner has drawn 5 penalties for the Sabres, so he's given them 5 power play opportunities. He has 6 5-on-5 takeaways, which is second on the team to Victor Olofsson. Like, he's doing other stuff. So the underlying numbers for Skinner are pretty good. The actual numbers aren't. So I get that, and that's what's important, the actual numbers. Totally understand that. But it's just, when you look at the numbers behind Skinner's game, And he's one of their better transition players. He's one of their better breakout players, one of their better entry players as well from the data that I've tracked. So the underlying numbers and the analytics for Skinner look very good. The production numbers don't. But the production numbers don't look good for anybody. So either let him work through the slump, like you said, Taylor Hall and Jack Eichel need to, or just admit that it's not because of his game that he's being sat. Because no underlying number in Jeff Skinner's game shows that he is playing poorly, other than the fact that he doesn't have points, which I get points are important, and that's why you get paid. But no one else on the team has points. They're allowed to work through the slump. Why isn't Jeff Skinner?
Yeah, and I mean, Jeff Skinner, like you said, drew 5 penalties. How many of those did he actually get to be on the power play, like to start the power play?
I can tell you right now how much he's played. I don't even know if I think he's had a couple of power play opportunities.
Has he had a cup of coffee
I might
with
be
the
thinking
first
of
unit?
last year.
Like, is he? Like, I haven't even noticed him on the first unit.
Jeff Skinner has 22 minutes of 5-on-4 ice time this year.
Yeah.
22. That is the 8th most out of anybody on the team. So Stahl, Ristolainen, Reinhart, like obviously the top unit, plus Ristolainen, and so Skinner has gotten some power play time, but I mean, he's only got 22 minutes. So if anything, he's on the second unit, which the second unit doesn't play that often.
No, because the first unit's out there for a minute to minute and a half.
The first unit's scoring, so like don't get me wrong, like I'm not saying anything bad there, but Jeff Skinner primarily plays at 5-on-5. Even when he plays at 5-on-5, he doesn't get a lot of ice time.
But how are you going to expect him to score with those guys? Like, again, he's playing with Riley Sheehan and fill in the fourth line right wing, whoever you want to say. I mean, those guys aren't going to get him in the opportunities that he needs to put the puck in the net. He's not going to generate a lot of offense on the fourth line. It's just not going to happen. And then
the thing is they're generating the offense. The puck's just not going in the net for him. So like at some point what is it? Like the puck has to go in the net, and I get that from a coaching standpoint, but you can't sit there and say that he's playing bad, because Skinner, Lazar, and Sheehan were a very good defensive line, and they were producing.
They probably should have been the third line. I mean, this third line of Reeder, Eakin,
the third
and
shutdown
Okposo.
line, exactly. Like they're trying to recreate the Larson, Oposo, Girgensons line. This line is not it. No disrespect to Tobias Reeder, who is probably the best player on that line. He's, for the money that you're paying him, he scored goals, but they're not a good defensive line. Oposo, the best part of his game now is when he can work the cycle in the offensive zone, but that doesn't happen often anymore because the Larson, Girgensons, Oposo line lived in the offensive zone. This Reeder, Eakin, Oposo line lives in the defensive zone. This is not a good defensive line.
Yeah.
So, but this line continues to stay together. This coaching staff can sit there and say they have inside information as to how they go into their lineup. But I'm just looking at Natural Stat Trick. That's a public website where you can access this data. What private data could this team have that we don't have access to that shows that this line deserves to stay together? Because every public metric that any standard person can look at shows this line should not stay together.
Ralph's got some economic stuff that he doesn't want to share with us.
They must have got 100 on his econ exam, so they're allowed to stay together or something. I don't know.
Oh, great job as always with Austin's analytics. But with that said, guys, we're going to take a last commercial break because we got a lot to talk about as far as the off-ice stuff, and we got about 20 minutes to shove it all into one segment. So we're going to take our last commercial break here and get into all the off-ice talk that we need to get to today. So stay right here. I'll be right back on the Niagara Lowdown Sabres edition and right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network.
J&L Flooring is a Niagara-based specialty flooring and design company. They take great pride in providing elite customer service and support. They are a specialty flooring and decor boutique shop with a beautiful showroom, great pricing, and a wide variety and truly unique selection of products. All their products are environmentally friendly and responsibly produced, so you can feel great about your flooring choices. Their goal as a local business is to build authentic relationships based on honesty and integrity that they foster with respect and authenticity, offering unique and wide range of quality products presented by a knowledgeable and patient team. They connect with their customers to simplify the process to make their life easier and to make their homes beautiful. Visit them at 4424 Montrose Road, Niagara Falls, or find out more at jnlflooring.com. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 5 p.m., and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. 905-358-3299 J&L Flooring. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill is located on the top of Clifton Hill and just a 5-minute walk from the majestic Niagara Falls. It is conveniently nestled in the heart of the tourist district. A family-owned and operated business, the Spicy Olive opened its doors in May of 2003 and has since been established as an authentic and unique Italian restaurant and bar. Its rustic ambiance and time-worn finishing provide a warm and inviting dining experience. Offering an array of delicious dishes, they specialize in authentic Italian cuisine, homemade sauces, fresh ingredients, and consistently providing a strong foundation on which they build their menu. As night falls, the Spicy Olive shifts to a lively lounge where drinks and live music come together to make a perfect evening. For more than 15 years, they have provided not only for their dedicated locals, but their customers from all over the world with authentic Italian food and great live entertainment. Open daily 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. for dinner and till 2 a.m. for drinks. Check out their new menu and book reservations on their website at Spicy Olive Bar and Grill, it's with an E at the end, .com, or call 905-371-2323 for reservations as well. The Spicy Olive Bar and Grill.
You're listening to the Armchair GM Sports Network, the Niagara region's best local source for North American sports podcasting coverage. By sports fans, for sports fans.
Hockey night in Buffalo. Hey, hey, here we go. The boys in blue, white, and gold. Hey, hey, here we go. Make some noise, get in the zone.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final segment of our Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition. Brandon Quiddle and Austin Broad back with you here. And the final segment on today's show is brought to you by Custom PPE, Canada's leading face mask provider, best prices and quickest turnaround in Canada, built from right here in the Niagara region. Order today at customppe.ca. We've got ours. Time to go get your custom masks to keep us safe during this pandemic. Austin, we got a lot to talk about here in this last segment, so let's get right into it here. The off-ice stuff obviously is something to be concerned. Ralph Krueger and Jeff Skinner's relationship. We know that Jeff Skinner has 0 goals on the season, making $9 million. We've known that he's been scratched for the last 3 games. We've known that he's been playing on the 4th line for most of the season, although generating some chances on that line, shockingly, with not playing with a lot of offensively talented players. And we've also know that his agent has had a discussion, phone conversation with general manager of the Buffalo Sabres, Kevin Adams, about his future and what's going on with Skinner. And obviously, signed the contract, wants to be here, but he wants to be on the ice and playing, not healthy scratch for the last 3 games. So I know you don't want to mention Krueger's name, but just what are your thoughts on just how in the last week or so this whole situation has just seemed to be blown up with Skinner being scratched for the 3 games and the questioning of if there's a disconnect between Krueger and Skinner, because he will not come out and blatantly say that Skinner is in his doghouse. For one, he doesn't apparently have a doghouse. And 2, he will not discuss that he has actually talked to Skinner. He says that whatever we talk about internally will stay with the group, and he cannot be transparent with every single thing that they talk about. So he wasn't on the ice for practice yesterday, which was also something that was, shocking. But just what do you think of this whole Skinner and Krueger situation? And do you think this gets resolved with both of them still being here?
I mean, this situation has just been boiling over. I feel like since Krueger got here, since Krueger got here, Skinner has not been used as a top 6 forward. Krueger even kind of mentioned it about Jack Eichel. He said as long as he continues to play within our framework. I mean, last I checked, I understand as a coach, you have your system in place, but maybe you should adapt your framework and your system to the roster that you actually have. So I feel like it's been boiling over, and Skinner, again, he has not produced. There's no getting around that. The dude flat out needs to score. But when I look at Skinner, when we talked about this team not having it and looking like they're checked out, Skinner was one of the few players that I think was at least trying. That's just my personal opinion. How is it? Today, Skinner practiced with Middlestat and Sheehan. We just talked about it, but Krueger pulled the classic coach speak that he likes to say. He's available, but as is normal, we're not going to reveal anything about our roster tomorrow. All right, cool, man. Thanks. So thanks for the update that literally means nothing. So, it's become, for lack of a better words, it's become blatantly obvious that there's just it's something personal. Tage Thompson got to play last night over Jeff Skinner when Jack Eichel was a late scratch. Tage Thompson makes $1.4 million, has 0 points. Jeff Skinner has $9 million, has no points.
And Tage Thompson was projected to start. Well, he was given an opportunity in the top 6 to start the year.
Yeah, so do I think this situation gets resolved with both of them here? No, because in my personal opinion, this is more than just hockey. This is something off the ice that the two just don't get along, that there's something going on. So no, I don't think this can be resolved if they're both here. And based off of, I didn't hear the exact comments of Darren Dreger on the Instigators this morning, but my buddy from the Charging Buffalo told me that Dreger kind of made it sound like the Sabres are perfectly content with driving Skinner out of town to keep Ralph happy. I'll have to go back and listen to it so I can actually have an opinion on it. But basically, when it comes down to it, you should never choose a coach over a star player that you willingly paid $9 million to. But as of right now, until Adams and the front office staff say otherwise, we have to assume that they're fully on board with what Ralph Krueger is doing and they support it.
And I mean, you have to hold the players accountable. You can't let them run the asylum either. But at the same point, I mean, the Krueger situation, I think they summed it up best in the pregame yesterday, was that they don't want to be paying 3 coaches that aren't even coaching this team anymore, with Housley and Bylsma still getting paid as well from this team. So you don't want to add Krueger to that list, but at some point, like, you got to understand that it's sinking farther than anybody had expected it to. And if you don't want it to completely hit the iceberg and have your franchise player that you tanked for years to get in Jack Eichel just go up and leave and be requesting a trade and wanting to start another rebuild after you're 10 years into a playoff drought, longest in the league, I mean, at some point you're going to have to make a tough decision here, and it might have to be, again, another coach casualty. But again, Krueger's a smart guy, but I just don't think that a head coaching role is the right role for him. I think as an executive, as we discussed on TV and even, in the past, he's a smart guy, but at being an NHL head coach, just I don't think is the right fit for him.
No, and I kind of get it. I mean, obviously, you don't want to be paying people to not work for you. You don't want to be pulling the trigger on firing people too early, because then you get a reputation of being, Jerry Jones in the NFL, who just. But at the same time, you can't make this about money if you're the Pagulas, because when you bought this team, you literally said, if I need money, I'll go drill another oil well. You said the sole reason was to win a Stanley Cup. It's only been a year and a half, but Krueger's not the coach to lead you to a Stanley Cup. Neither was Housley. Honestly, neither was Bylsma. Bylsma was a good coach in Pittsburgh, but he obviously coached the best player in the game, and then Evgeny Malkin. So it's just, you either got to pick your side, and your side is either you pick the coach, which whatever, if you decide to support the coach, you support the coach. That's cool. But if you're supporting this coach and what he's doing, you owe it to not only your franchise, but you owe it to Jeff Skinner to try and find a solution for him, because paying $9 million for him to sit in the press box is ridiculous. Buying him out's not an option. You'll be on the hook for way too long.
He's not going to void the contract. He's making $9 million for 7 years. You think he's going to, want to get out from under that? I don't think so.
No, and they gave him a no movement clause. At some point, if the dude's not playing, you're hurting yourself. And I know we've said this so many times, I know he's not scoring, but he's not playing bad. He's playing with Curtis Lazar and Riley Sheehan. I get it. They've scored even strength goals and Skinner hasn't. Sports are random. Random stuff happens. But you paid him $9 million, and now you're just going to let the coach come in and be like, you're sitting in the press box because you're not a good two-way player. You paid him to score goals, not to play defense.
And the only way that he gets moved is if he gets traded for another horrible contract from another team that somebody wants to get out from under. So it's not like you're going to be, getting that $9 million in cap space. You're going to be taking on another team's dead money from another player. A rumor that came out was maybe Florida and Buffalo could swap Skinner for Bobrovsky. But, I mean, is that even helpful at this point? I mean, I know the Sabres are, could use some goaltending, and Bobrovsky is obviously a serviceable goaltender, but then you're paying a goaltender, $9-10 million for the next 7 years, which is not good either when he's already over 30, so that situation could be just as bad as the Skinner situation. But do you see something like that as a swap possibly happening of Skinner going for a guy that's on another atrocious contract just for the fact that Krueger doesn't want him on the team anymore?
Again, I mean, in theory, that's a great idea. Skinner's got a no movement clause. You're not sending him anywhere he doesn't want to go. Like, it's the only hope is that you can find somewhere that he wants to go. You can find someone willing to take him on for the rest of his contract, and you're going to have to bite the bullet and retain $4.5 million of his $9 million. But if you do that, again, you're freeing up $4.5 million, I guess, but you're still hurting yourself because you are on the hook for $4.5 million for a dude to not play here.
Yeah, for a lot of years.
So, and again, like more stuff, like another quote from Krueger. They asked, what does he have to do to get back into the lineup? Krueger said, you need to earn your keep in this group. Mentioned that the Sabres have a culture of accountability. Dude, these words, these fancy words, these little buzzwords, no one's buying them anymore. No one's buying them anymore. If Skinner has to earn his keep in this group, how come Cody Eakin doesn't have to earn his keep in this group?
Kyle Oposo.
Kyle Oposo doesn't have to earn his keep in this group. Carter Hutton doesn't have to earn his keep in this group. Carter Hutton's probably the worst performing player on the Sabres this year. The team has decided to do nothing about it. Jeff Skinner all of a sudden doesn't score some goals because you're playing him with fourth liners, and all of a sudden he's a problem off the ice. He wasn't a problem off the ice when Botterill traded for him and Housley had him and he scored 40 goals.
I don't think Skinner's that type of guy either. Like, I don't think.
He was actually genuinely happy to be here. Like, look at him on the ice; he's always smiling. Like, the dude's somehow the happiest person in Buffalo when he has no reason to be. And did Buffalo pay him too much money to be here? Probably. But you paid him the money, and he's a consistent 25 to 30 goal scorer in the NHL. Is he ever going to score 40 again? Probably not. But if the dude can get you 25 goals and draws penalties the way he does, sure, we overpaid him, but he can still be effective. And when you look at Skinner's game, he's not some big sniper like Jack Eichel who's got to shoot the puck from 20 feet away. Skinner gets a lot of his goals at the net front. That stuff doesn't disappear with age. If you're strong and you battle hard and you get to that net front and score dirty goals, that stuff never disappears. So I don't know. The situation has basically become not a power trip. I mean, sort of a power trip, but it's basically Ralph Krueger saying, I just said his name. I already broke my own rule.
Yeah.
I'm the coach. I can do what I want. I'm going to come up with these reasons that but fans aren't that dumb anymore. They don't buy that Jeff Skinner is being held accountable for something because we see what other players on the roster get treated like. We see the coach talk about accountability and then not show up for an interview on WGR. Like, I would respect him a heck of a lot more if he just came out and said, I don't like him, and that's why he's not playing.
Yeah.
Would I understand it? No, but at least you wouldn't be lying straight to the fan's face when we know you're lying about it.
Yeah, and trying to play off of words, which he's very good at. But
yeah,
we'll get into the Twitter poll because I almost forgot. But good job, everybody who voted on this. 93 votes for this first poll about the coach. So out of the last 4 Sabres coaches, who would you rather have? Krueger, Housley, Bylsma, Nolan? And somebody said none of the above, so shout-outs to them. But, it's basically the best of worst at this point because none of them ended up working out. But shockingly, Dan Bylsma, 53.8%, was the winner in that poll. Ted Nolan was second with 28%. Housley was third with 10.8, and Krueger was last with 7.5.
I was a little bit surprised. And can I just say one more thing about the fact that the coach says that he's in constant communication with the GM? Mm-hmm. Apparently today at his press conference, the coach said that he wasn't aware that Jeff Skinner's agent spoke to the GM until asked about it by the media today.
Wow. So much for them being in sync and him
like,
having
come
some
on,
say.
Like, you can't make this stuff up, man. Like, this is just like, are you serious? But back to the poll, I was completely surprised that Disco Dan was the most loved coach out of the last 4. I was expecting it fully to be Phil Housley. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, well, it goes to show how bad Housley and Krueger were received by the fan base. Bylsma, obviously, they had the first-ranked power play, but they didn't go anywhere. So
I'll say the reason that I thought it was going to be Phil Housley is because look at how good Dahlin was in his rookie year under Phil Housley. Like, that's the reason I was leaning towards Housley, because we can say what we want about Housley. He didn't put any reins on his superstars. He told his superstars to go out there and be superstars.
He wouldn't have put Jeff Skinner on the fourth line and sat him for 3 games straight, probably.
No, definitely not.
And the other poll that we put up, which of these individuals who are currently employed by the Buffalo Sabres will be the first to leave the organization? Jack Eichel, Jeff Skinner, Brandon Montour, and Ralph Krueger. Brandon Montour won because obviously he's been rumored to be on the trade block, but 36.6%. Second was Krueger at 29.6%, and then Skinner and Eichel actually tied at 16.9%.
Wow.
So obviously Montour's probably going to get moved at the deadline, but other than him, Krueger looks like, according to this poll, that Ralph Krueger is the one that the fans want to be moved over Eichel or Skinner. So again, like you had mentioned earlier, do you want to save two players from leaving, or do you want to save the coach from leaving?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, the Montour one makes the most sense. He's a pending free agent. He's probably going to get traded. Obviously, we threw in Jack Eichel and Jeff Skinner and Krueger because those were the big three, because that's really what the drama is surrounding the Sabres this year. I like to think that it would be Ralph Krueger, but like I said, but now this news comes out that Krueger didn't know that Skinner was unhappy, even though the GM spoke to the agent less than 24 hours ago. And less than 24 hours ago, the coach said the inner circle of communication is very strong between myself and Kevin Adams. Like, I don't know. Maybe the coach is somehow on thin ice and we just don't know about it, but this organization is very quickly unraveling and becoming a clown show, for lack of a better word.
And we've got a few more minutes here to talk about Jack Eichel, and we could talk about him for hours, but with him, obviously he was maintenance day, they said yesterday, off the ice, didn't practice, and then was a late scratch before the game, so he did not play, and there's obviously been disconnect there. He's unhappy, sick of losing for 6 years in his career, watching all the other young players get a chance at the playoffs and basically showcase themselves. And this year he has not looked himself in that. He just does not have the dynamic, look that we had seen from him and the leader of this team. And he just looks like, from his body language, he just looks like he's kind of checked out and just frustrated with the whole situation. Do you see this be getting resolved, Austin? And I know we talked about that they have about a year and a half to trade him to whatever team that they want before his no trade clause kicks in this contract. Do you think there's any way that this can get resolved and turned around with him wanting to stay here? Or do you think that moving into the summer that they need to look at a team that has a lot of draft picks or a lot of prospects that can get us a nice return for Jack Eichel and kind of start the rebuild? Because if you're trading Jack Eichel, you're not getting better. So that would essentially mean you're going into a third rebuild in 10 years.
So it might just be my mindset because of what's happening with the team right now. But if things continue like this and the chaos and the clown show, for lack of a better word, continues off the ice, we're going to get a real good idea of what the Sabres are thinking come this trade deadline, because usually the type of trade that surrounds a player like a Jack Eichel is started at the trade deadline and finished on the draft floor most of the time. So if we hear Eichel's name floated around this year at the trade deadline, this trade deadline is a little bit different because of the COVID stuff. We don't even know if it's going to be a busy trade deadline. But if we hear his name floated around, one, that means this season is falling apart, which it already is. Two, that means Eichel and Adams have had a talk, and there's an understanding that it's time to move on. So we're going to get a good idea when this trade deadline passes. But right now, no, I don't think there's any way this can be turned around because just look at, you're not going to get better by trading Jack Eichel. Obviously, you're trading the best player available in that trade. But if you trade Jack Eichel and you decide, okay, I'm going to use that money and that cap space that we're getting to keep Sam Reinhart around, because Sam Reinhart looks pretty good this year, invested in Rasmus Dahlin because he's starting to look like himself again, and you have Dylan Cousins, and you build around those three. Who knows if Jeff Skinner's here, because, again, we just don't know what's happening in that situation. But you're not going to get better in terms of the immediate future. But if done properly, and that's a huge if, you can set yourself up to have a little bit of a brighter future, because it's not Jack Eichel's fault it hasn't worked out here. But at some point, 6 years, 7 years is enough.
Yep.
And I would rather them do it now than wait till he has the choice to go where he wants to go. Because once you limit your choices of where you're trading him, you're getting the Ryan O'Reilly trade. And we already know that's not good.
You have no leeway at that point, and you're not going to have the bidding war that you might have in the next 2 years for his services. So I think that's something we can discuss next week, kind of options for Jack Eichel to be traded to and what kind of return we're kind of looking for and what other players we could see on this lineup going into that new stretch of Sabres hockey if Jack Eichel were to be traded. But I think we'll leave that towards next week. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's episode of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition. We'll be back with you guys next week. And again, there's a lot of games to discuss for next week. Obviously, they've got Philadelphia coming up. We could be talking by next week and only 4 points out of a playoff spot. Could be depends considering how much of a dumpster fire it has been. And then obviously the games against the Rangers and the 3 straight against the New York Islanders. So we will be right in the thick of that by our next episode. So we'll see what happens. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for today's episode, again, of the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition, right here on the Armchair GM Sports Network, your source North American sports coverage by sports fans, for sports fans, delivered to you right here in the Niagara region. As always, I'm one of your hosts of the show, Brandon Caputo. You can follow me on Twitter at Caputs13 with a Canadian Z, as well. You can follow my co-host, Austin Broad, at AustinBroad_TCB. Make sure you're checking out his stuff on Dobber Prospects and thechargingbuffalo.net as well. A big thank you to our Sabres fans and you other listeners for tuning in and listening along for this episode, and our sponsors again for keeping us on the air. This has been the Niagara Hockey Lowdown Sabres edition on the Armchair GM Sports Network by sports fans for sports fans. We'll see you guys, and we'll talk about RK more next week.